And now, come closer and hear these words from the prophet Isaiah. You are our God. We are just the clay, and you are the potter. We are the product of your creative action, shaped and formed into something of worth. Here ends the reading. Thanks be to God. Chris Norton, in his book, The 7 Longest Yards, tells about the last football tackle he ever made. You see, on that last tackle, Chris dove right into the player carrying the ball with his head colliding into the player's thigh. And that tackle instantly broke his neck and severely compressed his spinal cord, making it the last play he ever played and the last day he ever walked. A helicopter was called, and Chris's life was changed forever. But it was during that helicopter ride that Chris learned his most important lesson in life. He says, I always imagined my first helicopter ride would be a fun experience, but that couldn't have been farther from the truth. It was just me and 2 EMTs in the back of a chopper, taking off for the nearest trauma center. I couldn't look around the cabin, much less out the window. Instead, I lay there, immobilized, staring straight up, and for the first time since it happened, the floodgates in my mind burst open and the thoughts came crashing into me. Will I ever play football again? Will I ever walk again? Will I ever be happy again? An overwhelming sense of helplessness overcame me, and it was in that moment, the moment I hovered between life and death, 10,000 feet above the border between Minnesota and Iowa, that I made a decision to change my attitude and stop viewing myself as the victim of my circumstances. And my reality began to change. For the first time, I realized that my attitude had the power to transform the world around me. The lesson I learned that day in the helicopter proved invaluable. In the coming years, I would face more than my fair share of obstacles and challenges, and no matter how complex or scary they were, I chose to tackle them with the exact same attitude. I owe my happiness to the fact that I am consistently pointing out to myself the things I have instead of the things I don't, the things I can do rather than the things I can't. And he says the most important lesson he learned, the one that truly saved him, was the realization of just how powerful our attitude can be. Because with enough effort, a transformation of our attitude has the power to completely reshape our reality. Right now, our reality has been reshaped. But how are we reshaping ourselves so we can emerge transformed? Transformed into something new, something better, something restored. Because we can approach this time feeling tied down, or we can maximize this time feeling like we can be tied anew, newly tied to ourselves, to our peace, to each other, and to our God. What have we been tied to? And what do we want to bind ourselves to instead? How do we want to be reshaped in this time? Because the hand of God is upon us, shaping us, molding us, and giving us new insight to go back out into the world with brand new ways to make decisions, and with a whole new alignment of our priorities. Why? Because God is the potter. We are just the clay. And when life as we know it stops, God stretches out God's hand and says, "Let me reshape you. Let me transform you and restore you into the vessel of love that I originally created you to be, and that I know holds you steady and secure." Has that vessel of love, our true selves, gotten bent or twisted out of shape during our lives? Has it been molded by our circumstances, thereby shifting our priorities? And has that shift of priorities left us feeling depleted and a little unmotivated? Because it can. And if it does, don't worry. It's not too late. In fact, now is the time. Now is the time, because even if the entire world stops, God does not stop. God never stops transforming us and reshaping us and tying us back to the love that binds us to our peace and to our wholeness. What priorities do we want to realign? What do we want to tie ourselves to so we come out of this ready to live the life God has called us to live? Because Kitty O'Meara, poet and writer, recently wrote these inspired words. "And the people stayed home and read books and listened and rested and exercised and made art and played games and grew gardens full of fresh food and learned new ways of being and were still and listened more deeply. Some meditated, some prayed, some danced, some met their shadows. And the people began to think differently. And the people healed. And in the absence of people living in ignorant, dangerous, mindless, and heartless ways, the earth began to heal. And when the danger passed, and the people joined together again, they grieved their losses and made new choices and dreamed new images and created new ways to live and heal the earth fully as they had been healed. How will we use our time? Because Chris Norton, the football player whose last tackle paralyzed him for life, he says, "I have never allowed my physical paralysis to paralyze my mindset. It's easy to see me in a wheelchair and think I should be miserable. However, that couldn't be further from the truth." You see, when Chris's world stopped, he did not stay tied down. He tied himself anew and reset his priorities and his mindset. And now, 9 years later, he says, "I've made huge strides in my path to nobility. And I have a speaking career. I married the love of my life, and we have a beautiful family together." May we, all of us, come out of our stopped world being able to say, "Above all, I clothe myself in love, which binded everything in my life together in perfect harmony, because I let the peace of Christ rule in my heart, to which I was called, And for this, I am thankful. Amen.